Millions of years before the great dinosaurs, monsters of a different sort ruled the world. Strange sail-back creatures like these were our ancient ancestors. Skeletons hidden in our closet. As paleontologists dig up new clues, modern technology sheds new light on the distant past. Meet a member of our family as we unearth the bizarre tale of the sail. "75 miles northwest of Fort Worth lie the Texas Redbeds. This shabby stretch of land in Archer City County, Texas, gets its name from the dusty red soil and the punishing heat. By noon, the hot July sun will bake the earth to a temperature of more than 110 degrees. Rattlesnakes, scorpions, and other poisonous creatures make their home here. One touch from this centipede's legs can prove lethal. Deadly creatures roam this valley millions of years before the dinosaurs. For 2 decades, paleontologist Tim Rowe has been studying the creatures of this period. Today, Rowe and his team of paleontologists brave the elements, searching for clues that will bring them face to face with the fiercest creature ever to inhabit the redbeds, Dimetrodon, a reptile known for the enormous sail on its back. When Dimetrodon ruled the Texas redbeds, the land was fertile and wet. Today, Dimetrodon's remains litter the rocky, barren landscape. The soil here is so rich in fossils that each new rainstorm exposes new specimens. If you don't know what to look for, you might miss them. But Tim Rowe easily spots the backbone of a Dimetrodon lying in the dust.
Look at that. It's another Dimetrodon vertebra. Yeah, sure looks like one. Just a big keel down the ventral.
Soon, this one small bone from a Dimetrodon spine leads to an even bigger find. A skeleton that includes part of the animal's sail.
That's really a beautiful specimen. It's wonderful to be able to come out here in just a few hours, see something like this, something I've never seen before, and not have to sweat for the entire summer, you know, and just dig into the ground in a couple hours, and there it is. It's really wonderful.
Bit by bit, these discoveries are writing a story that affects us all. More than just a simple reptile, not quite a dinosaur, this monster, Dimetrodon, is also our ancient forefather. The story of Dimetrodon and its descendants is also our story.
It's our own family history, and we can track it very deeply back into time. Most people think of human history in terms of a few millions of years and our relationships to apes, but we can track our own history from a form like this back nearly 300 million years to an animal like this, like Dimetrodon here.
Armed with a powerful jaw and razor-sharp teeth, this deadly predator grew up to 12 feet long, the size of a hippopotamus. With innovations such as the sail on its back, Dimetrodon and its close relatives represent a new kind of creature, more advanced than earlier reptiles, but not quite a mammal. These proto-mammals, as they are called, were the prototypes that set the stage for mammal and ultimately human development. This distant ancestor is the oldest portrait in our family album. He lived more than 280 million years ago, a time known as the Permian period. Animals competed violently for survival. Success required some sort of advantage. Dimetrodon's advantage was as plain as the sail on his back.
The sail of Dimetrodon is a really interesting feature. It's made up of a series of tall spines like this that form a big sail extending behind the skull of the animal. There's no animal alive that has a feature anything like this, and so its function is really controversial. There are basically two ideas on what the sail is for. The first, and probably most widely accepted, is that it's a heat radiator that is for gaining or losing heat more quickly. The second one is for sex.
Was Dimetrodon's enormous sail simply a way to impress a date? Nicholas Houghton doesn't think so. Here at the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., he studied mammal-like reptiles for decades. He thinks the sail was used to regulate body temperature.
The sail probably functioned as both a radiator and a heat absorber. As a heat absorber, it would allow an animal to warm up faster than the animals were not so equipped. And if it was a predator, it'd get going after lunch more quickly. If it were prey, it could get out of the way faster. And so it probably got pretty hot, too. And this would be a problem with an animal as big as Dimetrodon. And to get rid of excess heat, it would simply turn so that the sail was parallel with the rays of the sun, and its higher temperature would then be radiated off into the air, and it could cool off.
Others, such as maverick paleontologist Robert Baca, disagree.
The people who want to make anything sticking out of the body a cooling mechanism should watch more animals in a zoo. Things that stick out of your head or stick out of your back are nearly always used first to intimidate rivals, sexual rivals. Second, maybe as a radiator. But the main reason for moose antlers or finbacks is to intimidate your rivals.
Though opinions about Dimetrodon's sail may differ, most scientists agree that Dimetrodon and its relatives mark a key step between the cold-bloodedness of reptiles and the warm-bloodedness of mammals. Reptiles rely on the sun to raise their metabolism. They're cold-blooded. Without the sun's warming rays, they become slow, still, and helpless. But mammals, like us, have more sophisticated internal machinery. We can generate the energy our bodies require no matter what time of the day it is. We're warm-blooded.
Warm-bloodedness is like keeping your house warm by opening all the windows and turning the thermostat way up, constantly producing a lot of heat, most of which flies out the window, but you keep your house warm. The reason it's an advantage is you're ready for any sort of situation. If it suddenly gets cold, suddenly starts raining, suddenly gets dark or cloudy, you've got so much body heat, you can keep your body temperature high. So warm-bloodedness is the best way to be ready for any challenge.
Dimetrodon used its sail to warm itself earlier in the morning. Other reptiles its size might take 2 hours to warm up. Dimetrodon could get moving in half that time. While potential reptilian prey waited for their blood to warm, Dimetrodon hunted. Then as now, the early bird got the worm. Its victims included other proto-mammals such as Ophiachodon. It was perhaps the largest land animal of the Carboniferous period 300 million years ago. It grew up to 15 feet long and crawled along the ground on stunted legs. Ophiachodon means snake teeth. It was named for its teeth, which curved backwards, as a snake's. But neither its size nor its sharp teeth could protect it against the powerful jaws of the more advanced Dimetrodon. The lizard-like Ophiachodon and its kin gave rise to 2 lines of sailback reptiles. One included the small plant-eating Adaphosaurus, an evolutionary dead end. From the other line sprang Dimetrodon. Its success at temperature regulation provided the mammal-like reptiles with an early and powerful lead against the true reptiles. A battle for dominance of the planet was just beginning. The predator, Dimetrodon, no ordinary reptile, but the first of a whole new line of proto-mammals. Reptiles have one kind of teeth, uniformly throughout their mouth, but not Dimetrodon. Its name means 2 types of teeth, and that's exactly what we find in its mouth.
An interesting point of resemblance between us and Dimetrodon is the dentition, the teeth. Dimetrodon has simple incisors, followed by a specialized canine, and a series of teeth of different sizes that are specialized behind the canine. This feature is not something that we find very commonly distributed throughout the animal kingdom. In fact, it's really only found in one other group, in mammals. Mammals, like Dimetrodon, have a dentition that's made up of simple, specialized incisors, a canine. Of course, our canine's pretty small, but it's still a canine. And behind the canine are a series of specialized, differentiated teeth of different sizes that perform different functions than the teeth in the front of the jaw. This feature links us with Dimetrodon, like it or not. You could pick your friends, but you can't pick your relatives.
With the development of specialized teeth, Dimetrodon was one step closer toward becoming a mammal. 360 million years ago, before Dimetrodon, the first creatures crawled out of the ocean and invaded the lush, marshy land at the edges of the continents. These simple four-legged creatures, early amphibians, began spreading over the earth. Within 20 million years, they diversified, giving rise to the earliest reptiles. But the early reptiles soon reached a momentous fork in the evolutionary river. They split into two groups, and these two different designs began to compete for supremacy. From generation to generation, over millions of years, each line improved and perfected its design. The only difference between them was a simple hole in the head. But this seemingly trivial detail made all the difference in the world. Most of the early reptiles developed into a line known as the diapsids, which means they had two openings in the back of their skulls. Over the course of millions of years, the diapsids evolved into dinosaurs, lizards, crocodiles, and all modern reptiles.
This is a crocodilian, and this is a diapsid. Here's the hole where the eyeball would set, and behind it on either side are two openings through which the jaw muscles can expand without squeezing the brain. As this animal closes its jaws, the muscles can expand upwards and outwards here instead of squeezing the brain. This ultimately enabled this lineage to evolve a larger brain and a more powerful bite, be smarter, better predator.
But Dimetrodon's line chose to follow a different path. For reasons that aren't entirely clear, these early reptiles developed only a single hole in the back of their skulls. We call this group synapsids. All proto-mammals were synapsids, including Dimetrodon. From this line, cows, dogs, humans, and all other mammals evolved.
This is one of our extinct relatives, and it's a synapsid. Here's the hole where the eyeball would sit, and this opening back here is the synapsid opening. This is for the jaw muscles to expand outwards. If you turn the skull over, it's a little more clear what I mean by that. Here and here are where the right and left jaw muscles set, and squeezed between them is the brain. When this animal closes its lower jaws, it would squeeze the brain if there weren't some room on the side of its head for the jaw muscles to expand outwards. Being a synapsid has to do with developing a stronger bite to permit larger jaw muscles to evolve, and at the same time to permit a larger brain to evolve. This is a human skull, and this skull shows to which group we belong. Here's the opening where the eyeball would sit, and behind it is a single opening. This is a synapsid. The synapsid condition allows for the jaw muscles to expand sideways here without squeezing the brain between them. This permits us to have a much larger brain without compromising the effectiveness of our bite.
One extra little hole in the skull made such a big difference in the development of the proto-mammals. Over millions of years, this innovation led these creatures to develop mechanisms for more sophisticated hearing and sharper senses. This new skull design spurred the evolution of the three-boned inner ear, superior to the reptile's single ear bone.
So, for example, in this jaw of Dimetrodon, there's a little flange of bone here that was involved in sound reception. And this flange of bone represents a significant step towards the origin of mammals.
This three-bone design remains in mammals today. Better hearing and a better sense of smell made these creatures better hunters. The world quickly became a scarier place. To attack or run requires speed and endurance, and the proto-mammals adapted to survive. The arms race of the predators became more of a leg race. From the ancestors of Ophiuchodon 340 million years ago to Dimetrodon 280 million years ago, we see the legs begin to shift from the sides further under their bodies. By the time the saber-toothed Inostrancevia alexandri terrorized the swamp forests of ancient Russia 245 million years ago, proto-mammals had clearly made the transition from reptilian to mammal-like posture. Their metabolism, too, may have become truly warm-blooded. With a faster gait, the mammal-like reptiles took possession of the land masses. No simple reptile could stand up to these formidable predators. For 50 million years, they dominated and terrorized the planet. At the same time, evolution took a branch of proto-mammals on a wild detour, producing aggressive animals known as headbutters. Many species evolved strange horn-like growths and thick skulls. Some, like Esteminosuchus, resembled the modern moose. Others, with knobs and bumps covering their faces, could only be compared to monsters of the imagination. These thick and strange skulls developed because butting heads became part of their mating rituals. It was a strange way of showing their mates just how hot-blooded they had become. Long before the hot-blooded headbutters, Dimetrodon may have used his sail as a sexual lure or a signal to rivals, perhaps by changing its color.
Dimetrodon was a cold-blooded critter, gotta understand. Its immediate descendants were the first hot bloods. They included the first headbutters, animals with huge bony crests around their eyes, for whacking and thwacking each other. Now think about that. When hot-bloodedness evolves, suddenly you have a lot of energy. You, the individual critter, what are you going to use that energy for? Well, you can keep yourself warm and you can migrate, but in the breeding season, you can use that energy for whacking and thwacking and pushing and shoving and ramming your sexual rival right in the guts. So it actually makes a lot of sense that physical combat in courtship would evolve right after warm-bloodedness first evolved.
The walrus-like Lystrosaurus typifies one of the later headbutters. The skull is thick and nearly flat. Millions of years of headbutting behavior produced this strange creature with a turtle-like beak squashed against a flattened face. Mammal-like reptiles grew and flourished. They had taken important steps from reptilian to mammalian form. They had struggled up the evolutionary ladder, but then suddenly and inexplicably, the dinosaurs took control. The proto-mammals began to disappear. Despite the great evolutionary strides made by the proto-mammals, something went terribly wrong. At the beginning of the Triassic period, 245 million years ago, the highly developed and greatly diversified proto-mammals began to die off in record numbers. The larger they were, the more vulnerable. And at the same time, the first little dinosaurs were mysteriously thriving. The dinosaurs began a long conquest of the planet. In battle after battle, they pushed the proto-mammals to the brink of extinction. The proto-mammals' dynamic and seemingly unstoppable rise from lizard-like Ophiachodon to sailback Dimetrodon to the truly warm-blooded and dog-like Cynoognathus suddenly faltered. To survive, the late proto-mammals, like Thrinaxodon, were forced to downsize. They held on to life in forms no larger than a rodent. Reduced in size and pitched against the skillful dinosaur predators, proto-mammals had to adapt to nighttime activity to survive. Now technology is revealing what these small creatures were doing in the darkness. They were getting smarter. With lasers, x-rays, and CAT scan images, Tim Rowe and his team can actually get inside the head of a proto-mammal.
Here's a little Thrinaxodon skull. Be careful with it.
They're discovering the story of how mammalian intelligence developed. Rowe has studied extensively the skull of the advanced proto-mammal, Thrinaxodon.
The CAT scanner uses an X-ray beam to effectively slice this specimen as if it were a loaf of bread, simply slicing it from bottom to top in this orientation. And what you're looking at is a single slice that's about the thickness of a piece of paper that was taken through this skull. Here's the next slice, a little higher. Here's the next slice, a little higher yet, a little higher, a little higher. This slice shows the matrix here in dark. It shows the bone and teeth in light. And by going through this slice by slice by slice, we can see all kinds of details of the anatomy of Thrinaxodon. And with a computer, we can not only slice through this frame at a time, but we can animate it. And here you can see a passage from the bottom all the way through the very top of the skull. Here's the very top of it right there. And that's it. Go all the way through this specimen automatically like that. Visualize the internal details, the external details in just a few seconds.
With its small head and pointy snout, this mean-looking animal was one of the most advanced of the proto-mammals. Small but deadly, it had a vicious set of teeth that could shear and slice its prey. It stole through the forests, bullying and killing animals its size or smaller. As proto-mammals went, the size of its brain made it a genius, but compared to the brain of an opossum, it was a mental midget. Yet even with these new technologies, many mysteries about the development of mammals remain unanswered by the fossil record. We do not know when many significant mammal traits developed, such as mothers giving live birth instead of the reptile trait of laying eggs, or when these mothers developed mammary glands to suckle their young. Many of these mysteries could be answered if we had samples of soft tissue from the extinct animals. Unfortunately, fossilization preserves only the bones and teeth, rarely the soft tissue that surrounds them. Whether or not proto-mammals had developed fur by the time of the Thrinaxodon is a hair-raising question that has spurred serious debate. Nicholas Houghton thinks they had.
There's great big holes in the front of its muzzle, like this. These holes were passages for blood vessels and nerves, which may have been the innervation and blood supply of whiskers, which are sensory organs. But whiskers are specialized hair, and if they had whiskers, maybe they had hair also. So a living Thrinaxodon may have looked even more like a possum than their skulls do. In other words, they were warm-blooded and hairy.
But the latest CAT scan images lead Tim Rowe to think that Thrinaxodon had little or no hair.
This area of the brain is involved in mapping the sensory input from the hair over our body. In Thrinaxodon, that region is missing. So if Thrinaxodon did have hair, it didn't have as much hair as modern mammals did. Hair didn't provide quite the sensory input. If it didn't have as much hair, it also wouldn't provide quite the insulation that it provides in modern mammals. So if Thrinaxodon did have hair, it wasn't keeping it as warm as the hair keeps modern mammals. Thrinaxodon probably wasn't warm-blooded quite in the sense that modern mammals are.
In the beginning of the Jurassic Age, 210 million years ago, we see the first full mammals, creatures like the Morganucodon. It was as small as a squirrel. For 145 million years, mammals grew no larger. Until 65 million years ago, when in a twist of evolutionary fate, the great extinction killed off all dinosaurs. With the dinosaurs out of the way, mammals rapidly evolved, and some grew in size. The millions of years they had hidden themselves had paid off. They now assumed domination of the planet. The enormous diversity of modern mammals owes its evolutionary heritage to Dimetrodon and the other fantastic proto-mammals from virtually the beginning of life on land. From this incredible tale of the sail came the traits that make us mammals and make us human.